Hi, everybody. Thanks for joining us. This is Yossi Feinberg. I'm the faculty director of Stanford Ignite, and I'll be the director of Stanford Ignite in New York. The purpose of this session is sort of to give you another overview of the program. I'm sure you read about it, but it's always good to sort of emphasize the different parts of the program. And it's also an opportunity for you to ask us questions. Is there anything that you're interested in knowing that's beyond this information? So please, as I'm talking and introducing the program, don't hesitate to write in, send us your questions. And what I'll do at the end, I'll look at all the questions and then we'll answer as many as we can, time permitting. So thanks again for taking the time. Let me just sort of remind you what Stanford Ignite is all about. And it's about solving a problem. And it's a problem that we see a lot here in the Valley, but we see it even more dramatically manifest itself in other places around the world. And the problem is that the people who are doing the innovation, the people who are actually have the ideas and are executing on those ideas are not necessarily the most experienced people in starting new ventures. The skill set hasn't been, prepared for that usually, and what happens is that, because of that, there really are the people that can make mistakes that are highly avoidable. That are around actually the management skills or the business skills of a new venture, and that's the thing that we sort of figured out is the problem that we here at Stanford at the business school have specialized in solving. So this is really where we aim the program, and this sort of tells you also what kind of people we're looking for. We're looking for the people that will fit that profile of a need that we're trying to solve. So again, the causes of failure, they come, the multiple causes of failures, but we identified that, many of the failures are unawareness, lack of exposure to why ventures can fail. And realizing that most of the failures are not technology failures or that the idea is not good, but things fail on the business side. Not only that, a lot of the successes are on the business side. I mean, even in the examples that include the most, innovative and creative, successful companies, if you look carefully, you see that a lot of them where the success really happened was when there was a very solid business model around the technology. I mean, my favorite example maybe is Apple, right? They innovated a lot, had a lot of great technology, but the Newton failed and the iPod, succeeded dramatically. And the big difference between those is that the iPod really had a solid business model of selling content through the sort of the technology innovation. So there was a big part of it was a business innovation. So and again, we see it everywhere. We see that it's really it's not enough to have a great idea. It's not enough to be passionate about it. But it really is all about having a solid business behind it. And I want to mention here that, when I say a solid business model, this applies for nonprofit as well. So we really don't distinguish between for-profit and nonprofit. A nonprofit is also about return. It's about the return in impact. For the investment that people who donate or support the venture give that venture. So for us, the measure is just the same. You want to have a dramatic return. You want to have dramatic impact in a nonprofit. So these are very similar structure for us. So whatever I'm going to say for the rest of the webinar, please, make the translation in your mind. It applies to both for-profit and nonprofits equally. And that brings it to the next point, which is this failure that we see. For us, really, this is mission-driven for us. It's a huge social cost because it's the top talent, the most passionate people go and try and create new ventures and impactful ventures, and we find that our passion is making those ventures succeed, and for that we targeted the program. We have many years of experience here in the Valley. I mean, the business school obviously was educating entrepreneurs decades ago as well. But this program really started in 2006, and we sort of perfected it here on campus, really have a model that is very effective. We want it to be short. We want it to be loaded with content in a way that, you can always spend 3 years learning things, but those are 3 years in which you don't execute. So we brought it into a program that's very efficient. It has exactly what new ventures need to start and be successful. When we took this program around the world, we realized that it's essentially almost identical issues that new ventures faced everywhere in the world. And we have been teaching in our at the GSB here a very international group of students in our MBA program, and the content is really a content that is transferable. The whole idea is that the way the program is built is that it's going to help you not only in this particular idea that you're thinking about, but it actually will help you evaluate all of your ideas and be applicable to any kind of new venture that you want to develop. And to do that, it's really a program that's applicable everywhere around the world, and that's what we see. I mean, it's our most successful program, the highest ranked program that we get. And we've been running this all over the world with a lot of success, and this is why we really are excited about taking it to another location here in the States. So let me tell you more about the solution. I know many of you have looked on the website and already sort of have a general idea about what the program is about. But I want to emphasize a few things, and those are important things. It really is a rigorous academic program, and we focus on the fundamentals of business as well as the practical implementation of those fundamentals. So think about it this way. We're not going to teach you, 3 sequence classes in marketing, because the idea is not to create marketing professionals. But we need to teach you enough of the conceptual way of thinking about marketing and unravel enough of those that, what's usually for most participants is black box of what marketing is trying to do, and turn it into something that you, for your venture, will understand what kind of marketing requirements will make this venture successful. So it's, again, very condensed, applicable but conceptual understanding of the discipline that the program provides. And we do that for each one of the core disciplines of business: marketing, finance, accounting, and so on. To do that, it's a really difficult thing to teach. I mean, you don't want to underestimate the difficulty, and to do that, we really have our most senior people teaching in the program. These are, tenured Stanford professors. These are the star teachers in our other programs, in the MBA program, in executive education, people who have a lot of experience in the Valley. So when they created their content, really tailored it to new ventures. And it's pretty incredible to see, how in a few sessions they can really, equip you with the tool of their discipline. with a way of thinking that sort of opens up their part of the of what they contribute to building a new business. So it's a lot of professors. The majority of them teach remotely, but live. We really believe in an interactive, immersive experience. So the professor, to make it cost effective, we don't fly all of them all over the world, but they teach live with very high, high bandwidth. So it's very interactive and personal. And what the professors bring to each session is not only the opportunity to learn from them, but also the opportunity to ask them questions. So we always leave enough time for having this, this discussion during class, but also, a quick discussion after class, like you come to chat with the professor afterwards. Again, this immersive experience, this is part of why we're so grateful to partner with Cisco here. Obviously, they are the masters of bandwidth, and that's what allows us to have this very interactive experience. I want to mention here that the content is not only for entrepreneurs who are out there to start new businesses, but also if you're inside a large company and are looking to innovate inside that company, which means exploring new technologies or new markets for an existing large corporation. Again, the word usually people use for that is intrapreneurs. I'm not necessarily a big fan of it, but that's sort of what it's called. There are changes, even though a lot of the basic content applies. It's sort of when you're building a company inside, a new venture inside a large company, there are things that change, but that's more of the content that applies to the project component of the Ignite program, and I'll talk a little bit more about this later. So again, the content is sort of distributed to the core business skills that I mentioned before, more applied skills, and these are just as important as the core business skills. These are negotiations, teamwork, public speaking, feedback, leadership. We structure a lot of your meetings as teams. We have you go through exercises in those. We sort of rotate leadership positions in the teams because a lot of the learning happens because there's a team component and a project component. This allows us to do a lot of teaching there that saves you a lot of, a lot of learning with real teams working out there on actual projects. Again, we have entrepreneurship classes, a few design thinking classes in the beginning that are more about the process of getting to understand better user needs, for example, and sort of the process of ideation, but it also connects to team dynamics as well. The team venture component is sort of the major component of the program other than the content, and it goes parallel to the content. So again, the objective here is to teach you how to evaluate ideas, how to formulate them, how to develop a business model around the idea with all the components of what will make for a successful venture, and how to communicate your ideas to different constituencies, right? It could be to investors, it could be to potential employees, and it could be to a network. So it's really, that's the part that makes a lot of the learning in the classroom applicable. So what happens with the project component, you get a lot of milestones where you develop the project as we go along the program, develop it on the business side, right? Again, we're not gonna We don't incubate projects. We're not going to work with you on the technology or anything. That's not our expertise. But given the technology or the technology potential that you're going to analyze, we're going to help you design a solid business model around it and develop all the skills of being able to do it with any ideas in the future. There's a lot that goes on to the project component, and there's a lot of moving parts. I'll mention just a few of them. Beyond this very structured setting of tackling the program, you get a lot of feedback. You get check-ins from me, from the faculty that's on the ground. You'll have mentors that will be assigned to each project based on the project needs. These are the people who will give a lot of industry experience that fits the project. We bring in a lot of panelists that provide you with feedback, and there's this final pitch at the end of the program where, you know, every team presents to professional investors or very experienced entrepreneurs or experienced people from the industry, and this is where sort of you get the final feedback on the business model that you created. In terms of benefits, I mean, again, we can go into more details. A lot of this is on the website, but obviously there's an academic benefit. You really learn the language of all these basic disciplines. Again, I don't think about this as sort of a diluted MBA experience or something of that sort. That's not the purpose. You know, if you get 4 sessions of accounting or 3 sessions, that's not going to make you switch into that field of expertise, right? While, you know, in an MBA program, you may decide that that's the direction that your career is going. So it's a very different setting, but you will understand what accounting can give you in building a business. And a lot of this is language and the way of thinking in that discipline. And that's a lot of the awareness that we see out there comes from the fact that people are missing those components. Obviously, there's practical skills that are being developed, anything from the team experience that's very structured to the actual milestones. And what we see in many cases, people go through the program, they work on a project, then they go back and they say, okay, these are my ideas, these are the projects I might be interested in. And what they do is they sort of run the program through their ideas repeatedly and then pick the venture that they really want to spend their time and effort into. So we see that as a really replicable tool that you can take with you. Obviously, there's personal skills, public speaking, presentation skills, team skills, leadership skills that are developed. And finally, there's the network, added value, which is, I mean, you work with mentors, you become part of the extended Stanford GSB network, and it's really a network of people who are passionate about entrepreneurship, innovation, and it's a growing network around the world. Obviously, there's the circles, widening circles to the network. There's the cohort that you'll be part of in New York, which is going to be a selective group of people who are, who come to the program for the same reasons. Then there's the sort of the network of igniters that now is in the thousands all over the world, and the wider network that includes our MBAs, our executive education participants, and even the Stanford wider network. As I mentioned, we have 9 years of success here on campus. Started in 2006. In Bangalore, we're going to be in our 3rd year this coming year. We've run for 2 years in Paris. We've run a program in Beijing. We've run a program in Santiago, and we're going to run a program in London. We did another program on campus for veterans of U.S. Special Forces. We run 2 programs on campus. London is coming next year, Sao Paulo is coming next year, and New York is coming next year. So it's really a growing program, but I don't want you to get the feeling that this is like, it's not growing, not exponentially, not even linearly. We actually are growing it, and our focus now is actually on sustaining the program in every location. And sort of we will grow a few more locations in the future, but not at the rate we've been growing, because we really believe about in creating a community in every location that we're present. Again, this is mission-driven. We want to help the ecosystem with our expertise and be part of it. And again, this has been very successful around the world. Just to give you a feeling, the people in Bangalore, after the program was over, we're meeting on a monthly basis. In other locations, they're meeting almost on a weekly basis. And again, every community really coalesces around the program. And we welcome others. I mean, this is a program that really is all about pulling all our resources to support successful innovation, and that's what we're after all around the world. Again, I mean, this is an old slide. We have participants from many dozens of the biggest companies you can think of. So you name it, we have a participant from that company. The backgrounds of people coming in is, it really depends on the location, and there's sort of high variance between locations. But, we get engineering, medicine, science, and humanities. I expect New York to generate more people from the arts, humanities, media. But again, it's hard to predict the characteristics of people that we get. The more diverse it is, the better it is, because the experience, especially the team dynamics experience, really tries to mimic a real venture. And in a real venture, you will have people who come for different reasons and with different backgrounds, and that's what really makes for effective teams. So again, getting the skills of working with diverse teams that can be so much more powerful is one of the things that we look forward to every location that we go to, and especially New York. Again, in terms of education, most participants have an advanced degree. It's not a requirement, but it turns out that once you go through the admission process, there is some correlation, and more people with advanced degrees get into the program. But it's not a necessary condition. So we are looking for outstanding people. Many outstanding people did not choose, that path in their career. As I said, it's selective. We're looking for 30 to 40 people. I mean, that's usually how we start a new program. And the size depends on the quality of the applicants. So, if we get only 25 great people, that's the number of people we'll take. Because again, this is not about any quota or something like that. So it's really about our success is the success of the people who take the program. That's the success of our brand, and that's why we really focus on getting the people who will, a good fit for the program, will get the most out of it. The requirements, I mean, it's pretty easy to apply, but there's some process in it. We ask you to sort of obviously include the resume. We ask you for very short essays, again, a little bit to get to know you. And it's very important that we also get recommendations from people who know you well. So people can sort of tell us more about, why are you sort of the person that can drive entrepreneurship or drive innovation and execute on it. So a minimum of undergrad degree. We actually have sort of this is an unusual program. There's a condition of of being too qualified. And if you have a very extensive managerial experience or a very strong formal graduate business education, in that case, a lot of what we teach in the program is probably something you already know. And in that sense, it doesn't make sense for you to take the program. Again, you know, our seats are limited and we want to make them as impactful as possible. So we rather give that seat to someone who will benefit more out of it. Again, a lot of people ask me, well, I managed 15 people for 7 years. Does that count for extensive managerial experience? The answer is no. But if you're, you know, if you're a senior VP in a company with 5,000 employees, I'd say you probably, you know, with 20, 25 years of experience, this is a program that you probably shouldn't take. Again, you've been exposed to all these aspects of a business, and a lot of the content will be content that you know. When it comes to education background, a lot of people take undergrad business degrees and they wonder about that. Well, if you're not sure, just ask us. This is the best thing to do. So, you know, some programs are very intense and extensive, but don't overlap a lot of our material. We know. So just ask us if you're uncertain. Tell us what you took, and we'll figure it out. That's for eligibility. The schedule, we start March 27th. We have 7 what we call extended weekends, which is basically usually all day, Saturday and Sunday, and some of the Fridays. We don't have, you know, class on holiday weekends, so nothing to worry about it. But it's roughly 100 contact hours in those 7 weekends. So as you can see, if you if you divide, it's a lot of hours per weekend. So we really, we really occupy all of your weekends. What's important to notice, and I have to tell you, this is a slide I show at the end of every program, telling the participants, remember I told you this and you didn't believe me. So please, please believe me when I say there's between 100 and 150 additional hours that you're going to spend on the program. And that's spent on preparation for classes. Again, we want to be efficient. Professor comes in, they're not going to rehash the case. They're going to have you read the case, think about the question, they're going to run the discussion in classroom. This is how we make it effective. But there's also many, many hours that you're going to spend on the project. You know, unraveling what the business case is requires talking to a lot of people, interviewing people, doing a lot of research on your own, learning about competitors, learning about how other companies have done it in the past. I mean, it's tons and tons of work. You know, meeting the mentors, getting guidance, all these hours are hours that you not only have to devote to your project, you'll want to. You know, it's an extremely exciting experience, intense, sometimes stressful, but exciting, and you'll find yourself putting in that time. Why am I emphasizing this? Because if you know that you won't be able to, you shouldn't apply. You shouldn't apply if you can't truly commit that additional time and effort into the project. A lot of the learning works there, you know, happens there. So you want to get most out of the program, so please, please, please take it into account. If you have a significant other and you're applying to the program, tell them now, be nice now, buy some flowers. You have kids, give them some more hugs in advance. I mean, it's really an intense program. So make sure that you can allocate the time. If you know, talk to your boss, if you know, in your company, make sure that they realize what the commitment is, and they can allow you, and they won't start you know, having you travel while the program is going on, or sort of minimize the extra load. Make sure that you prepare if you're applying to the program. The cost, the same cost in New York that we have here on campus, which is $14,500. There's some partial tuition fellowships. Again, you'll get more details on that after you apply. Tuition is due late February, and the admission process is pretty quick. We interview all the applicants, so we have a first screening stage based on the application. Then we decide who we're going to interview, and after the interview, we make decisions pretty quickly. So that process concludes quite fast. Let me point out that when you wonder why it happens so much in advance of the program starts late March. Why do we want to conclude things so early? The reason is that we start working on the project ideas that you're going to submit before the program begins. So we ask people to submit their ideas. We then have other people sort of who are admitted to the program look at those ideas, have a discussion around them, start to vote and screen down some of the ideas. So we have the project selection process that begins before the program begins, and for that we need more time. This is why things happen early on. And finally, it's a certificate program. It's not about the grades. There's no academic credit hours. There's no, it's a certificate program. We have mandatory attendance, so we expect you to be there. We expect you to provide, the milestones. But I can tell you that in the many, now getting into, dozens of programs we've never had an issue with sort of, teams sort of not eventually achieving the program milestones. So that's what it's all about. Again, I want to sort of summarize and then go to your questions. What's the problem? The problem is insufficient business skills. Very few people have started new businesses in very different fields many times and were successful. The extended program problem is that there's no community support necessarily of people who have just as much experience. What is our solution? It's really about providing those business skills. The focus is the business and management skills in a way that is transferable and in a way that sort of creates this high quality network. We focus on leveraging technology to make this cost effective. This may seem a lot to you, but it's actually much lower than what we would have to charge if we had to fly people around, that number of people. And for this length of the program, I'd say it's roughly a third of what an executive program will cost for the same amount of time. And our purpose is really creating an active global community and have an impact on the local ecosystem. And that's why we're coming to New York. So with that, I'll start answering the questions that you have. Maybe Jennifer can read those questions and I'll answer them.
Sure. So thanks everyone for joining our webinar this evening and for sharing your questions. I hope that you find this to be a helpful exercise. One of the first questions that we received is, will the group be responsible for choosing the idea that they will work on together? And will we work on just one project throughout the program?
Okay, good question. So let me explain the project component selection. So what happens is before the program begins, we ask every participant if they want to submit an idea. And we actually give you guidance on how to formulate your idea, how to think about, we ask you particular questions about your idea. And those ideas range from anything that, people woke up that morning and decided they have a new idea to people actually bringing products from existing companies, where it's a company's venture. And they're saying, okay, this is what we developed. We're looking to actually create a new business line out of that. So we get a whole range of those possible ideas. What happens next is that the participants, each one of you, votes on what are the projects that they might be interested in working on. That's the first initial voting stage. Everybody gets 5 votes. You vote for 5 projects, your top projects, and then based on your votes, a subset of the ideas that were submitted go to the next stage. In the next stage, again, more guidance. We ask each what we call ID generator, people who brought their venture to the program, to provide a short video about the idea. And then what happens is the program begins, and on the first day, we actually have a mingling session. Again, I give you a little more guidance. Each idea that got to that stage is pitched, and then you get to talk a little bit more. And everybody submits their ranked orderings for the project. So, suppose we start with 30 participants, 25 ideas. After you voted for them, 11 of those went forward to the next stage. And then in the beginning of the program, those 11 idea generators all mingle, and then everybody ranks those ideas. You rank them by which ones do you want to be part of, right? After you rank them, we take your rankings and we form teams based on your preferences. Now, obviously, not everybody gets the top choice for 2 reasons. One is it could be that your top choice only has you as someone who's interested in working this. In that case, obviously, we can't form a team. It could be that your top choice, that 12 other people who want the same project, so not all of them can work on the same project. So we form teams of size, 5 to 6, sometimes it's a little bit less, a little bit more, but around 5 or 6 people per project based on your preferences. Most people get one of the top choices, and those are the projects that you work on from beginning to end. Now, I need to clarify this. Sometimes you start to work on a project, and within a few days or within a week, you discover that there's a venture who actually had the same idea. They executed much better and already up and running, and the team decides that they need to pivot. Again, you work in close consultation with us. We might let you pivot in the beginning. Usually it happens maybe to 1 team in a program, so it's not very common. In most cases, it takes a while to really uncover what's the value or the impact that this idea or innovation can create. And that's what happens in the program. It takes longer. And in that case, most projects don't need to pivot. So they just uncover it, and then they create the most viable business model that they can out of that venture, or most impactful model. So that's kind of the process. It's not that you come into the program and we just put you together in teams because you like each other, or you decided you want to work together, and then you just ideate and create projects as you see fit, and sort of work with a bunch of ideas. No, we don't do it that way. We ask you to really thoughtfully think individually on what kind of innovations you'd like to work on, suggest those, form teams around those, and then go into the development of the idea as far as building a successful venture out of it.
Okay. Wanted to make sure we covered this one as well. Somebody wanted to know, is the tuition for the New York program the same as in other locations? So is the tuition the same for all locations?
No, the tuition is different in every location, and it's kind of, makes a lot of economic sense that the pricing will be different for various reasons. One is our cost, but it also is, cost of living. If someone is, there's a high cost of living in New York, but the ability to pay in Bangalore is dramatically lower as well. So, we take that into account. Comparable places get comparable pricing. And again, we think that here in the Valley and in New York City, prices should be the same, so we keep them the same. But in other locations, I think the question comes from probably someone who's considering taking the program somewhere else. And again, if you are really in multiple locations and you're not sure where you should take the program, I think there's a deeper question there of where you want to build your life and career, because that's the right place to take the program. So I think you need to answer that bigger question. But going to Bangalore, going to Sao Paulo to get a discount on the program will not be as efficient, because the project will be different. The community, the closer network will be more detached if you're going back to New York. So if you live in New York, if you see your career, your passion, you're building a venture in New York, that's where you should take the program. But otherwise, if it's somewhere else, go there.
Okay. There was one other question. Does that mean accommodation is included in tuition? And I can actually answer that one for those who are curious. So the program in New York, like many of our non-Stanford campus-based programs, they're built as regional programs. So people either live and work in that area and attend the program, or they will travel in on weekends. And we have people who either fund that on their own, or they find friends and family to stay with. I know Airbnb is really popular, so sometimes people try to do that as well. But no, to answer the question, accommodation is not included in the tuition. Okay. One more question. Is it a goal of the program for the business projects to get funded?
So yeah, we get that question a lot. I want to make it absolutely clear, we're not incubating ventures. We're incubating people, in the sense that a lot of the very successful ventures that came out of Ignite were not necessarily the project people were working on in Ignite. I mean, if I create a team of 5, 6 people, right, when I selected each one of them as someone who could potentially create the next big thing, right, obviously that is an ad hoc team. Some cases, 2, 3 people decide they want to start a venture together or continue working on the project. But in many cases, the people come to the program because they want to pursue their own venture. So we focused on the people. Now, the objective of making a business, getting funded, right, that as an operational thing, usually depend on what value proposition you bring to the entity that's going to fund you. It starts with what kind of funding do you need, right? A lot of the people with great ideas, they think, well, I have a great idea. I'll go to people that will give me a lot of money, and then I'll be able to execute on this thing. And then they go to investors, and surprise, surprise, investors want a little bit more than just an idea before they put a lot of money into it. Again, if you have a solid business model, if you develop a solid business model, if this is something that the investor sees that the return and the risk profile of your venture are such that it fits their investment portfolio, then you'll get funded, right? And it's much more important to figure out what kind of funding you really need and where that funding really is. And that's what we teach. We teach you how to think about, what are the financial needs of your venture for your particular venture? How do you analyze them? What kind of investment vehicles fit each type of venture? And then you can actually go and raise funding for that. Again, so the goal of the program is not to actually fund particular projects, the projects in the program. I will even say that most people who bring their projects in the program very quickly realize that, at least in their early stages and structure, a lot of these ideas are not fundable. And that's a huge value for the program, right? Think about, people trying to get something funded for months, not realizing that there's a lot, what needs to be done for it to be funded.
Okay. Another question, will we have an opportunity to attend any networking events on campus during the program?
Yes, so we have, it's not during the program, but we actually have every summer a reunion here, and obviously here on campus at Stanford, and obviously this is where we organize activities, usually a lecture and reception. A lot of people from the community come and join. We also beam this to people who, who can't make it, but essentially this is the, the yearly reunion event. Once a program runs, usually we encourage and help the cohorts to keep in touch with each other, to actually have an occasion to meet. And, in many locations, there are meetups that are organized by the Igniters. There's a very successful one with hundreds of people joining to each meetup here on campus, and that's the kind of activity we want to see replicated all over the world. And obviously, when we return to a place a year after, we get the people who went through the program the previous year, get engaged with the new cohort. Again, we mix them together, we create events together, again, strengthening the community. So absolutely, all these are part of the activities that we do to create a community.
Great. Jumping over to a question about the application process. Who should we ask to write the letters of recommendation?
Oh, that's a great question. So it's a tough one, right? Because I'll tell you which letters we sort of are most helpful for us. On two dimensions: people who know you well, and people that we would trust their judgment, right? So your mom knows you really well. We love your mom, but she's sort of could be biased, and she may not have the experience that we're looking for someone to sort of give us a little bit more insight into your capabilities. So, if you work for a large company or, senior people who know you well and are very experienced people and can write to your, tell us more about you, that's going to be helpful. If you work for a small company, obviously people who would know you better, but again, maybe closer to you. So in terms of their experience, maybe not as intensive. So again, find that balancing things. If you're still a student, like if you're a postdoc or a graduate student, so a professor who knows you well, that would be. So it really depends on your situation, but those are the two dimensions I want you to think about, which is someone who can actually write, knows me, right, and can write about what's special about me, and someone that when they see that person writing in, they'll say, okay, this is someone whose judgment they can trust in terms of, the depth and understanding of what we're looking for.
Yossi, can you elaborate a little bit about the essay portion of the application?
Wow, I always have a hard time answering that question. Here's my real big tip: keep it short.
But not too short.
Yeah, not because we don't want to read. It's really keep it informative. This is not about your writing skills. This is not a college essay application, getting to know you type of thing. It's really about answering those questions to the point, what have you done? What brings you to the program? That's the kind of, the kind of essay. It's really something that supplements your resume in some sense. Okay, so think about it that way. It's the missing part that you want to highlight, and that's how I would look at the essay.
Okay, back to projects really quickly. How is IP protected? And as a follow-up, what about the ideas that do not get selected as projects? Are they also involved in some way, or do they get worked on?
Okay, great question. Two separate questions completely. So I'll start with IP. It's important to understand, first of all, that Stanford has no interest or will take no ownership of any part of what's created in the program. That's an important part. So anything that happens to the project during the program, Stanford does not have any claim on it. So that's important, especially if you're bringing projects from companies. Moreover, IP does not, ownership does not change during the program. So whoever brought the idea in owns whatever was created in the program. Everybody else in the team does not develop any ownership claim. That's an important thing. Now, the exception is, remember that one team that made a dramatic pivot? If that extreme happens, then, usually as a team you discuss this. But people very quickly realize that the value, much of the value is created by execution. Unless you really have already intellectual property that was something developed in a lab and really is the core of the barrier to entry to the business, right? That's usually the cases where there's a lot of value coming in with that IP. But if you have an idea and you're saying, oh my God, I can't tell this to anyone because if I tell them, they'll go and do it. This is probably an idea you want to be very careful before you execute, because it's so easy for someone else to do it. What exactly would prevent it from doing it, faster, if they're better funded, for example? So again, there's a lot of dimensions to that. But bottom line, I want to remind you, whoever brings the idea in owns it on the way out. Ownership does not change. That includes projects that you might bring in when there's a team of you, right? There could be 3 people already working on something. Only one of them takes the program. They're bringing the project to the program. In that sense, they're protected because ownership does not change by the fact that other people were working on a business model during the program. So that's an important thing. Also, you shouldn't expect it, right? If you're working on a project in a team, the fact that you spend 7 weekends in the program, for you, it's only consumption, right? You only gain from that learning experience. You're not getting any ownership from creating that business model. Now, a lot of people say, oh my God, if my project is selected, that's great. I have a lot of really smart people work on a project. And if it's not, that's a big loss for me. Well, it is a loss, but it's not as dramatic as you think, because again, the skills and tools you develop in the program are replicable. So what we see a lot is people go to the program and then say, oh, wait a minute, here's the list of things I was thinking about working on. They run them, simulate them through the program, and do the same milestones, and they figure out what they're going to work on. And actually, the majority of ventures coming out of Ignite have that flavor. The thing about Ignite is the place, everybody says that failing is good. Failing is not good. If you have the option, don't fail. But if you're going to fail, it's a good process. You learn a lot from failing. And it's a good process to work on a project in Ignite that might not be that amazing new venture when you actually look and analyze it. And then you can have those skills and you're much more prepared to actually, be successful out there. One last thing about IP, and then I'll talk about the other question. The IP, if you're coming from a company and there is particular IP that the company is concerned about, not because it's IP is protected, but the company is concerned about something like trade secrets, we do allow for NDAs. So non-disclosure agreements are only applied if you bring in projects from a large established company. If you're a startup with 3 people and you bring your project, we don't expect people to work on your project and sign an NDA. It just doesn't make sense. So that's one exception where we actually ask people to sign NDAs in the program. Professors, investors, panelists, they never sign. The second part of the question was, Jennifer, remind me.
I think you were chatting about the ideas that don't get selected as projects moving forward.
Right, great, thanks. So what happens to ideas that are not selected? Can they be involved in the program? As I said, they're not going to be formally involved. And the reason is you just won't have the time and there's not enough. We focus the resources on the learning experience with the projects who are going through the program. So ideas that don't get selected, in the program, nothing happens, right? But what you can do is, again, parallel to the program, develop them. And again, if after the program you want to chat with me and sort of get feedback, you'll be part of the network. So a lot of the things that you can get, like feedback and so on, you'll develop the tools to actually apply them to your own project, even if it's not selected.
Okay, so I think we are about out of time. Thank you, everybody, for joining us again this evening. I just wanted to give a quick reminder that the application deadline is January 12th. Recommendations should also be submitted by that date. And if you have any questions, please don't hesitate to contact us via email or telephone. That should be in most of the email communications you've received from us. But just to reiterate, the email address is gsb_ignite_NYC@stanford.edu. Thanks, everyone.